All right, well, it's the appointed time. Are we ready to go?
I'm ready.
Excellent. All right, everybody, welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. My name's Angela. Today I'm joined by JC Figueroa. He is our head of customer success. And we also have Lori Rubin on. They are both going to be helping out today. JC's going to be helping and presenting about our topic for today, and Lori's going to be helping out in the chat. So you guys are in great hands. Before we dive into today's topic, I want to let you know about some of the other events we have going on for you. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we do live open Q&As. These are for everybody, no matter if you're brand new to Mylio or if you've been with us for a very long time. These live Q&A sessions are where you can drop in, ask questions, and I do my best to help answer anything about photography, family history, organization, really anything that's even remotely Mylio adjacent. I do my best to answer for you. Next week, we're going to be starting a new session with Lori on Wednesday, and I got the date wrong there. It's supposed to say 11:30, so it's the same time as all of our other sessions. This one is called Just Ask, and this is specifically for people who are new to Mylio. And if you want to hang out with a different crowd, go ahead and please feel free to drop into Lori's sessions. All of these are listed in the community at community.mylio.com. And again, her session is a drop in, ask questions. And these are going to mostly be more about like getting started, adding vaults, adding media, and those things you want to do right when you're getting started with Mylio and you want to learn kind of those best practices. So please be sure to join her if you fall into that category. We'll also be having another coffee break next week. We're going to be talking about working with videos in Mylio. So we're going to talk about what it can do, what it can't do, and how to make sure you have access to the videos that you want in your Mylio library, no matter what device that you're on. So all of these events are at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. Tuesday through Friday is when we have different events going on. And you can find all of these at community.mylio.com. RSVP there. If you RSVP in the community, you can get a reminder notification and add it to your calendar and so forth. So hope to see you guys at all of those different sessions. So with that, let's go ahead and jump to today's session, which is Apple Photos and Mylio Photos. Better together. The reason we wanted to do this session is because there's a lot of confusion out there about how Apple and Mylio work together, what does what to expect, and some of the edge cases that people encounter. So we're going to go through a lot of different stuff today. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and hand the reins over to JC. I'm going to run the
What?
slideshow.
Me?
I'm just going to put you on the spot.
I
It's
just
fun that
lurk
way.
here.
So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to him. And we're going to go ahead and walk through this. We'll tag team it together and we should have fun. JC's always great, great fun to present with.
All right. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me to discuss this often confusing topic. Um, so yeah, Apple Photos and Mali Photos can be a great combination and can work together. You just gotta have a little bit of knowledge of how the two interact. And what I'd like to do is to start is to discuss how Apple Photos works if and of itself, because a lot of people don't have an understanding of what it is that Apple does with the photos you take on your phone. So Apple Photos is an application that will be running by default. You don't get a say on all of your Apple devices. So if you buy an Apple device, particularly a full phone or an iPad, an iOS device, you'll start taking photos with that device, and automatically those photos go into your Apple Photos library. On a phone, we often call that the camera roll, but really is the Apple Photos application, and it becomes the Apple Photos library. That library is associated with whatever Apple ID you're using on that device. So what happens is if you're using the same Apple ID on your phone, on your iPad, and on your computer, by default, there is a product, an Apple product called iCloud Photo Library that again is turned on by default. And that Apple Photos library is going to be synchronized between all of your devices. So if you take photos with your phone, those photos are going to show up in the Apple Photos application on your Mac computer. If you import some photos from any camera into the Apple Photos application on your computer, those photos will show up in the Apple Photos library on your phone. So Apple Photos, if and of itself, is going to try to synchronize the Apple Photos library for the particular Apple ID between all devices. right? A lot of people don't know that happens, or a lot of people know it happens. They maybe don't know how it happens. It is a connection through iCloud, through the iCloud product that's just part of the Apple family of products. The other thing that iCloud Photo Library does is it tries to manage the storage on your devices. Again, by default, particularly on a phone, iCloud Photo Library is set up to optimize the storage on your phone. And what that means is that iCloud is constantly monitoring your Apple Photos library. If the photos on that device start taking a lot of space, they will be not removed because it looks like they're still on the phone, but the actual data goes to iCloud, freeing up space on the internal storage of your device. And then every time you go to interact with a photo that's not, the file is not physically on the phone, that file gets downloaded from iCloud Photo Library automatically. And in most cases, we don't notice because we're always on a fast internet connection via Wi-Fi, or even your cell connections are so fast. So if you're just interacting with a single photo or with a short video, those present quickly, but they're not actually on your phone. So as your library gets larger, 10, 20, 30,000 photos are in your phone, they're not really on your phone. Most of them are on the cloud. The reason this is important is because when you link that Apple Photos library to Mylio, Mylio is going to request all those files, and it has to get them by telling Apple Photos, hey, I need this photo. And Apple Photos on your phone is going to go, oh yeah, that photo's not here. It's on iCloud. Let me go get it. So it downloads the photo to your phone and hands the file to Mylio. Mylio does what it does, saves that file to your vaults, etc., and then it moves to the next photo. So this is something that people don't necessarily know, but it's an important part of the ecosystem and the relationship between Apple Photos and Mali Photos. So how does it work? Once you link an Apple Photos library on either a computer, a phone, or an iPad to your Malio library, and we can show you how that is done. Um, that library is going to be a one-way link. That means Mylio Photos is constantly monitoring your Apple Photos library. Every time it sees new media, it's going to import that media via a copy import. It's going to make a copy of that photo into its own library. It's going to move the originals to the devices you have designated as vaults. It's going to generate a thumbnail and an optimized version of the image. It's going to do all the things that it does, like face scanning and looking for text, etc. Um, and from that point forward, the two instances work separately. Everybody with me so far? That's clear. What Mylio Photos, what an Apple Photos library linked to Mylio doesn't do, and this is very different from when you link a folder, a regular folder, is that it's not a two-way connection. So if you make changes in Mylio Photos, those changes do not go back to your Apple Photos library because, again, it is a one-way sync. Media flows from Apple Photos into Mylio Photos, not the other way around. Um, And that applies for changes that you make. When you make changes in Mylio Photos, those are not seen on the other library. The two live as two distinct repositories. And be aware that they might take extra space on certain devices. So how you're managing that space on your phone in particular, it's important. All right. I think we beat that slide to death. So two ways of adding your Apple Photos library. Well, not your Apple Photos library, but the photos from your Apple device to Mylio Photos. One, the easiest and most straightforward way is to link the Apple Photos library. So on your phone, when you first launch the Mylio application, it gives you a checkbox that says, do you want to include your camera roll? If you check that box, that Apple Photos library is now linked to Mylio. And every time you take new photos, Mylio, you open the Mylio app, Mylio goes, oh, there's new photos in the camera roll. Let me import those. pretty straightforward. Same works with the Apple Photos app on your computer. If you link the Apple Photos app on your computer, it's going to constantly monitor in that library, and anytime new content comes in, Mylio imports it into its own library. The other way, and I don't know if people need a demo of how to do these links. It's pretty straightforward. You just go to the Add Media button, and there's an option for adding Apple Photos. It's as straightforward as that. Uh, the other option is to add the media manually. And there's more than one way to do this, but basically what you do is you um, either export photos out of your Apple Photos library, so they're separate, they're files outside of Apple Photos, and you then import those into Mylio. Or in the case of a phone, you can connect that phone via USB connection to your computer. That phone will show up as a storage device, and your photos will be viewable there, and you can just drag and drop them into the Mylio inbox, for example, and they'll show up in that folder or in any other folder in your Mylio structure that you have. There's some key differences between doing a link of your Apple Photos library and manually adding Apple Photos. Um, Apple Photos is what is called a proprietary or a closed system library. If your photos are in Apple Photos, you can only see them by opening the Apple Photos application. There is no folder anywhere that you could open and see your Apple Photos like you do with Mylio. Mylio is an open library. Um, so you have to go through the Apple Photos library. This is why you would require in a computer to export those photos first so that the files are available and visible to Mylio. Um, One of the things that Mylio does when you link that Apple Photos library is that Mylio is directly reading the Apple Photos database and it's learning information about your media. So for example, things like live photos or a panoramic photo, things that are a special format, all of those cool things that your iPhone does when you take photos, those can be preserved if you link your Apple Photos to Mylio, because Mylio will go and see, oh, this is a live photo. That means it's not just one file, it's multiple files. It's a still image and it's also a video. And it will take both of those, it will packetize them in something that we call an MYB file. You see it there under one key difference. And those MYB files will move with your media. So when you replicate your library to another vault, you can open the Apple Photos folder and you'll see here's image 001 and then there's image001.myb. That MYB is going to contain things like a video file. And within Mylio, on any computer, whether it's Windows, Mac OS, or iOS device, or an Android device, within the Mylio library, you can click that live photo and it will play that video. So linking an Apple Photos library retains the functionality of special format photos, where adding that media manually does not. So that's a big difference and something that if you're using a lot of those special formats, you will want to consider. All right, moving on. How do you link the Apple Photos library on macOS? Like I said, it's simple as clicking that plus button or the Add Media button on your computer, um, and then clicking the Add Media for Photos for macOS. That will show you whatever the system photo library is on your computer. So on Apple Photos, you can have multiple Apple Photos library, but only one of them is designated as the system photo library. And that's the one that Mylio will link. If you have multiple Apple Photos library and you want them all to be part of Mylio, my number one recommendation is that you merge those libraries together. And if you do a quick search on the Apple website for merging multiple Apple Photos library, you'll see instructions on how to do that. That is going to render the best results. If you really want to keep those libraries separate, there's a few ways to do it. They're a little bit hacky. Email us at support from the app, contact support, and we can give you some other methodologies for doing that. But my recommendation, if at all possible, is if you have multiple Apple Photos library or iPhoto libraries, the old version of Apple Photos, merge them all together, and then make that the system photo library, then link it to Mylio, and everything will come in at once. That will also help you avoid duplicates and other annoying issues. All right.
Oops,
Two ways
wrong
to,
way.
oh,
Wrong
you went
way.
the other way. Yeah. So linking on the phone is pretty easy during the initial setup of the phone. There's that allow import for camera roll checkbox. Um, it is an all or nothing proposition, right? So if you select that, it's going to actually that's not entirely true. The first time you do it, Mali is going to ask permissions to access your photo library, and you can either give it full permissions or select which photos. You could choose to select certain photos, but then it becomes a one-time import. And from that moment forward, nothing else would be imported. So you want to click full access when you give permissions. And that will make certain that as you move forward and you take more photos with your phones, those photos are coming into your Mylio Photos library. One thing that I will mention, if you are just starting and you're adding a large Apple Photos library from an iPhone or an iPad device, because of what I mentioned before, the fact that many of these photos might not physically be on that phone, they might be on the cloud, you're going to want to give Mylio plenty of time to synchronize that media. And that might mean that you leave your phone running the Mylio app overnight. So oftentimes people say, my photos never seem to finish syncing. And when I explain that they're really coming from the cloud, um, it starts making more sense. So just go into your phone and there's a setting called auto lock. Is under display and brightness on your iOS settings. You set that to never so that your phone won't go to sleep. You open the Mylio Photos app and leave it running on your phone. Make sure you plug your phone into power. And then you have your computer nearby running the Mylio Photos application. Make sure that your drives are connected if you're using an external drive for a volt. And just leave it running overnight. For most people, in just one night, everything will come in. For very large library, it might take multiple days, or I've seen sometimes take as long as a week for a very large library. And there's reasons for that. Something called throttling that we won't get into. Um, all right, so that's it. That's how you do it. Uh, Now you can connect this. Remember earlier on we talked about by default, iCloud photo library is turned on your devices unless you turn it off. So if you connect the Apple Photos library from your computer and you connect the Apple Photos library from your phone, you're really connecting the same library because they're being synchronized in the background by iCloud. So should you connect both? And yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't. The way Mylio works with an Apple Photos library is that every photo, every piece of media in an Apple Photos library has a unique identifier that Apple assigns to it in its database. And because Mylio is interacting with that database, it retrieves the unique identifier for that media. So if that photo comes in through the phone, Mylio is not going to re-import it from the computer or vice versa. So any photo will come in from whatever device Mylio first sees it in. And once it's in the Apple Photos library, it's there, it's done. You don't have to re-import it or it won't get duplicated. So connecting both is recommended. Manually adding media. Yeah, we talked about this briefly, how you can plug in via a cable like you would with a camera, and the phone will show up as a application. And then you just drag and drop those photos to wherever you want. I suggest the Mylio inbox because then you know they're there and you can move them, organize them to the folder that you want them to be in. Uh, but also the share mechanism is a great way to add media to your Apple Photos. And what's great about the share mechanism is that it's not only applicable to Apple Photos, it works with other applications as well. I'm going to share my screen for a second, Angela,
Yep.
um, and show how that works on a phone. So there's Mylio. And then I'm going to share my phone screen. Give me just a second. There it goes. All right. So there's my phone. There's my grandson. I love that photo. Makes me laugh every time. So let's say that I have photos somewhere in my phone that are not part of Apple Photos that I want to be in my Mylio Photos library. For example, my family has a WhatsApp group, and in that WhatsApp group, they're constantly sharing photos. Like here's a photo of my nephew uh, at a recent baseball game. So from here, I can click that share button. See that little up arrow with the square. And when I say share, one of the options for sharing is Mylio Photos. So if I tap that option, that photo now went to Mylio Photos, my Mylio Photos library. So if I open the Mylio Photos app on my phone and I go to the Mylio inbox, that is going to be the newest photo. It's right there. And if I go to my computer now and I go to that same inbox and go to, oh, let's sort alphabetically here. Sorry, it's alphabetically, let's sort by date. And there is that photo. So it's a really cool way of adding media to your Mylio Photos library, media that might be in your phone, something that was texted to you or sent through an application like WhatsApp. And of course, it works with your Apple Photos library if you have not linked your Apple Photos library. And of course, you can choose multiple photos, share them all at once. So really good way of doing it.
One
And
other thing to add there, and that's come up a couple of times in the chat, is sharing pictures from Apple Photos in that way is great for images that are shared to you from somebody else or in a
Mhm.
shared photo library. So if you have a family photo library
Right.
in Apple, Mylio is not going to automatically import those, so you can use that same share mechanism.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Oh, what are you seeing, Lanny?
Whatever it is, not working.
Not quite sure is it the Zoom is not working or okay,
Maybe he wasn't talking to us.
maybe not.
Um, yeah, no, that's a good point. And that functionality is super useful. I use it all the time, and it really makes the Mylio inbox make sense when you use it with a mobile device. You know, on a computer, you can drag things into any Mylio folder. The inbox is always convenient, but when you're on a mobile device and you share to Mylio and those images automatically appearing in the inbox, it makes all the difference. I do it with documents all the time. You know, I might be like, I download a PDF of like the latest camera I'm using or whatever, I just share it to Mylio, and those documents are always available to me. So it's a great way to do things.
Are
And
you able to get anything on your on your iPad that works?
I'm sorry, what are you struggling with, Laney?
Oops.
Sorry, you meaning to be on mute? Okay.
all right. So where does this media live once it gets to Mylio, right? Um, well, the first place you're going to want to look is in the folders view. Whether you added that media manually or you linked the Apple Photos library, that the first place that you're going to look for that media is in the folder view because there's a folder specific for it. Let's assume that you added an Apple Photos library from your phone. In the folder view on any of your devices, you will see an Apple Photos folder. And if you open that folder, you'll find a subfolder for every device that you've connected. Now, remember, Apple Photos might be coming from multiple devices, and it could be not just your devices from your Apple ID, it could be your partner or your spouse's devices, right? So if you're in a family and you added, you know, husband phones and wife's phone, there will be a subfolder for each of those devices, and the photos that were imported through that device will be seen, will be viewable in that Apple Photos folder. What's great about this is that you can always flatten that folder, use the little flatten toggle, and just see your Apple Photos library as an entire uh, library view and not have to see those subfolders. You have the option so you can go and see the subfolders or ignore the subfolders. But that's where the media is going to live. If you added that media manually, in most cases, it's going to be on the Mylio inbox. All right. So special file types, well, we talked about this already because I got ahead of myself. Live photos, portrait mode, slow motion, long exposure animations. These are all things that don't fit a standard format, and they're media that comprise multiple files. For example, a portrait mode photo on an iPhone is not a single photo. It's actually three photos. It's a photo that's blurry, a photo that's sharp, and a photo that combines the two, where it puts the foreground, the person or the faces or whatever is in the foreground that you want to accentuate. It takes that portion of the photo from the sharp version of the image. It makes everything else blurry, combines it into one photo. So with the way that Mylio synchronizes, you have access to all three versions. So, if you wanted a photo not to look like a portrait photo, but for everything to be in focus, you can do that because the data, the separate files have been preserved via the use of the MYB bundle. And you can learn more about MYBs both in our manual and in our support website, support.mylio.com. There's a really, really good article that this very smart person wrote, Angela. Uh, um, we do recommend that you don't mess with MYB files in your file system because that could affect how that functionality works within Mylio. Now, if you need to go into one of them, go ahead and contact us at support@mylio.com or via the contact support on the app. That's the best way. And we can tell you how to mess around with those MYB files. If you really, really want to look at one of them, just make a copy of it and move it outside of that folder. Take the copy and put it like on the desktop of your computer. And then you just change the extension from .myb to .zip, CIP, ZIP, and you'll be able to open that packet and see the contents of it. But make a copy of it first so that you're not messing up your library. Or even better, just don't mess with them at all. Just let them be. One of the cool things about having those MYB files is that you can use a quick filter by file extension and find all of these photos that have a special type, like a live photo, by searching for MYB. Of course, there's also a quick filter just for live photos. So the ability to play a live photo on like a Windows PC, a photo that you took with your phone, and play that live photo with the little video on a Windows computer is pretty remarkable. And it's something that a lot of people that live in a mixed hardware environment like Windows and Apple OS really appreciate because you couldn't do it otherwise. Even through the iCloud process, you wouldn't get that functionality. So, all right. So, a couple of special scenarios or what happens when we do certain things. So, remember, we talked about the relationship between Apple Photos and Mylio Photos is that it's a one-way link. So, if you delete media in Mylio, that media is only being deleted in your Mylio library. Mylio is not going to go reach over to Apple Photos and delete that media there. Likewise, if you edit media in Mylio, you only edit the instance that's part of the Mylio Photos library. It's not going to reflect those changes within Apple Photos library. If you edit media in Mylio Photos, and I'm kind of going clockwise here because I want the you delete media in Apple Photos to be the last one. So if you delete media in Mylio Photos, um, Sorry, if you edit media, I think this should say media in Apple Photos. If you edit media in Apple Photos, this slide, it should say Apple Photos, not Mali Photos.
Oh, did I mess up? Sorry.
No, it's okay. Um,
Typo.
I should have caught that. So the top right says if you edit media in Mylio, the change only happens in Mylio. If you edit media in Apple Photos, well, this gets really interesting. Let's say that you have your Apple iPhone connected, the camera roll from your Apple iPhone connected to Mylio Photos. Mylio is constantly monitoring the Apple Photos library on that device. The photo gets imported to Mylio. Now you go into that phone and you edit that photo. You turn it black and white or you crop that photo. The next time Mylio scans the library, it's going to look and cache that change and it's going to try to apply it to Mylio. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it depends on what Apple's doing in the background. But if the media is edited on the same device from which it was imported, in my example, an iPhone, then that change will be visible. Now, if the photo was imported through Apple Photos on your computer, and then you go and edit that photo in Apple Photos on your phone, then the Mylio won't consider that change because it's not monitoring for it. So it has to be edited on the device in which it was originally imported from. And then the last case, bottom left, you delete media in Apple Photos. Well, in most cases, that's only going to apply to Apple Photos. You delete it in Apple Photos, that photo should be saved and protected in Mylio. The caveat here is you have to make sure that the synchronization of that photo, particularly the original file, has already happened. Oftentimes people will say, oh, I see the photo, it's in Mylio already. So they go and delete it from their camera roll, and then they get something called a lost original. A lost original is when the original version of a photo is moved or deleted outside of Mylio, and now Mylio no longer has access to it. So let me give you an example that happens to me all the time. My wife sends me to the store to buy something. I get there and there's 17 versions of that something. So I take a photo or two and send them to her and say, is this the thing you want? And then she says, no, you're not even in the right aisle. So I have to go find it. Uh, and for some reason, I open Mylio. Now, Mylio sees that there's two new photos of a grocery item, and it creates a thumbnail of those photos, but I don't give it enough time to download the original. I move on. And then I get in the car and I'm looking at Apple Photos and I'm like, I don't need these photos that I just took. I'm going to delete them, right? So I delete the photos in Apple Photos. Now, Mylio only has a thumbnail. The original was only in Apple Photos and never got a chance to move that media over. Now I have a lost original. So that is one thing that happens. Now, there's an easy solution for this if the device that we're talking about is an iOS device. And that is a function called free up space on this device. It is in the More menu. I'm going to share my screen and show you guys again. Let me make sure my screen is still being shared. All right, so there's my phone again. So in Mylio, if you click the three little dots, the More menu up here on the upper right corner, you'll see there's a feature called Free Up Space. And if I tap that feature, there's a bunch of options here, and you can customize this by hitting the Customize button. But what this does is it compares your Mylio library to your Apple Photos library, and based on the particular choices that you make, is going to delete the media in Apple Photos on your behalf. In my case, I have my phone set up to any media in Apple Photos that's older than 90 days is going to get deleted. But it only get deleted if the original file has already been saved to my vault. Otherwise, Mylio will leave it. So every 30 days or once a month, when I open Mylio, Mylio says, hey, it's time to clean up your camera roll. So I'm going to click continue here so you guys can see what it looks like. So there is scanning all the photos in my Apple Photos library. It's comparing them and making sure that number one, they've been saved to my vaults. They're original files have been clearly saved to one of my Mylio vaults, at least one. And it's looking at the date and making sure that the files are older than 90 days. And then it's going to give me a summary of how many of the 3,276 files in my Apple Photos library could be safely deleted because I haven't protected in my Mylio library. And it's going to finish here in just a second. Almost there. And there it is. It's saying, okay, so nearly all of them, right? Almost 3,000 of them meet the criteria. And that would free up 31 gigabytes of storage on my phone, right? So this is really, really useful. And it's a safe way to manage your Apple Photos library and make sure that you're not removing originals that Mylio hasn't already synchronized. This feature, the free up space feature, is only available on iOS devices. There isn't a version of it for Apple Photos on your computer, on your macOS computer. So sometimes people try to clear cache on their computer and it won't clear. It's because it's considering the photos that are part of the Apple Photos library to be the originals if you haven't set up any other vaults. So that's a whole other subject. So let's get back to the slides. All right, so we cover all of that. A couple of edge cases. Apropos of what I was saying, no vaults means no separate copies. So if you link the Apple Photos library from your macOS computer to Mylio, and you do not have another vault other than that computer, even if that computer is set up as a vault, you have to have a separate vault, like an external hard drive, in order for a copy of those Apple Photos to be in existence in the file system where you can access them and see them. So this is yet another reason to have at least one external hard drive vault as part of your library. I strongly, strongly recommend it. I have three plus cloud. We talked about this briefly. iCloud shared photo libraries won't sync. So a shared photo library means that whoever owns those photos might not be you. So part of the permission systems in Apple Photos, when we interact with that library, is that uh, we we as a third party, meaning Mylio as a third party, doesn't access those shared libraries because the ownership of the photos in there is um, not known. So that's the reason we can't do it, because the API, the connectivity, the set of connectivity that Apple provides doesn't allow for it, at least so far. That might change in the future. And then we talked about clearing the cache doesn't always work as expected. Well, if the only version of the original photos is in a computer, um, that cache is not going to clear, because what you're telling Mylio is to go and delete media outside of Mylio and Apple Photos, and on macOS, Mylio is not allowed to do that. So if you have a computer and you're trying to clear space on that computer and that space is being taken by photos in your Apple Photo library, you either have to use an iOS device to clear that library using the function I just showed you, free up space on this device, or you manually have to go into Apple Photos and delete the photos that you don't want. And that's all I know. That's it. Oh, there's more. Okay. I have to know this too. Uh,
You
how
have to
to
know
disconnect the
everything.
Apple Photos library. Yeah, this is a per device setting. The easiest way to do it is by just going to the settings, either on the Mac or on the phone, and turning off the permission for that photo library to be shared with Mylio. On Mac is under settings, uh, and this is within the Mylio app. Is under settings, sync, and turn off sync system photo library. That will stop synchronizing that library. On the iPhone is similar, is the more menu, the three little dots on the upper right, settings, and stop syncing the photo library. On iOS, you can also do it from the iOS settings. You can go to iOS settings app, general Mylio Photos, and there'll be a setting there for Apple Photos, and you can remove the permission and it'll stop synchronizing. Another way to do the same thing to sever the connection between Mylio and the Apple Photos library on the device is to delete the subfolder that lives inside the Apple Photos folder. Of course, if you want to keep the photos, you're going to want to move that media to a different folder first. But if you delete the subfolder under Apple Photos on your folder view in Mylio, that will sever that connection and the synchronization between Apple Photos and Mylio Photos will stop. All right. Key takeaways. Sync is one way, right? From Apple to Mylio. Think of it as a copy import. Linking versus manual, why do one versus the other? Where when you link an Apple Photos library, not only is convenient because all you have to do is open the Mylio Photos app to synchronize your Apple Photos library, but special format photos are going to be preserved. Not having a vault means not having an independent copy of that photo. So the only set of originals is still going to reside on the Apple Photos library. So needless to say, everybody should have at least two vaults set up with their Mylio Photos system. And MYB files are hands off. Even though I told you how to play with them, don't do it. All right.
All right, we can go ahead and open up the floor for questions. I see Edward, you've got your hand up.
I got a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I have Time Machine. How does Time Machine work with in all this? How am I wasting my time having it?
So Time Machine is just it's Time Machine is a true backup system, right? A vault is a replication system that is making a replica of the live Mylio Photos library. Time Machine is going to make a backup, meaning an incremental backup. So it's not just a one-time stamp, but it's an overtime. So every so often, whatever setting you set, let's say you tell it to do it once a day, is going to go and look at whatever folders in your computer you tell it to back up, and it's going to make a snapshot of that. So let's say I have a folder called My Photos. Is going to back up that folder today and tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after, which is where the term time machine comes from because you can go back in time to the oldest backup you have or to any backup in between and retrieve media or data that was set up there. It is independent of Mylio. One of the things to know about Time Machine, it requires that you set up a hard drive or a storage system to be your Time Machine uh, system.
Yeah.
When you set up a drive to be a Time Machine drive, there's special code that Apple puts in it that makes it not play well with others. So a Time Machine drive cannot also be a Mylio Vault unless you separate it into two logical volumes. We won't get into that. The simple version is you should have a separate Time Machine drive and a separate Mylio Vault drive.
I've got two Mylio vaults and a
Right.
Time Machine. Am I overkill
That's
here?
that's
No,
fantastic.
I think that's a great setup.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And then
similar to mine.
yeah, same here. I've got Time Machine, I've got Backblaze, plus I've got three Mylio vaults. So yes,
Yeah,
I probably have overkill, but your Time Machine is backing up your whole computer, not just your Mylio files
right.
where your vaults are Mylio specific. So have you're no, that's not overkill. You're in a good position.
Yeah. Keep in mind, Mylio will protect your media library and the database of organization, but it will not protect the specific instance of your computer. So if your computer dies and you have multiple vaults, you can replace that computer as a new computer and your library will be linked from those vaults. But if you had, for example, if you have Mylio set up on a computer with a bunch of link folders and you want to replicate that in that computer, having a time machine backup would be a very easy way to do that. Did we answer your question, Edward? You say you had a
Yeah.
couple.
Yes, you did. Is there such a thing as clearing the cache on the Mac?
Um, yes, there is. If you go to the
And do I
system
want to?
settings, you go to system settings and you go to general and storage, there's some options there that are going to be somewhat similar to clearing the cache. Um, your best bet if you're trying to manage the internal storage on a Mac computer is to get a utility that's designed to do that. Um, there's a lot of things that accumulate on a computer over time, things like the data from a browser, right? So every time you load a website, a lot of the imagery and the data from that website gets stored locally for ease of access. And that cache can accumulate over time. If you know what you're doing, you can go and manually clear it, but it's much easier if you have a utility. And there's a number of utilities out there that do this. And they'll like even warn you. They'll be like, hey, looks like you're running out of space. You want me to clear this and this and this, and it just does it. I can't think of the name of any of them.
There's one that I
Right.
use called Clean My Mac.
Yeah, Clean My Mac is one of the most
It's
well
pretty
known.
common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right, next up we've got Marjorie.
Hi, okay. So I just want to be clear on the shared Apple photos. I have a lot of family photos that are in different files on Apple, but they're shared from family. I should just move them over to the inbox, the
Yes.
Mylio inbox, and
So,
that
so, are you accessing the shared libraries on your phone or on your computer?
computer.
So on the computer, you'll go to a share album and
Mhm.
you'll export that, and that will create files on somewhere on your hard drive, whatever you tell it to export it to, like your desktop.
Okay. Okay.
And then once they're exported, you can just drag that folder of photos into Mylio, into the Mylio interface, and that will trigger a copy import where you can.
Okay, so that's good to know. So it's not dragging it directly from the Apple
No,
photo.
you cannot drag
Okay.
from Apple Photos directly into Mylio. That I would suggest you avoid that because then you're not controlling the format of that export.
Okay, that's great. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right, next up we've got Harold.
Okay, that was very helpful, JC. I have two questions. I've
Mhm.
never bothered with the clear cache thing, but that first option about deleting files older than 30 or 90 days,
Mhm.
what files are being deleted? Files on the phone or files in Mylio?
On the phone. Free up space on this device. So first of all, that is an iOS only feature. So you have to run it on an iPad or an iPhone.
Right.
When you run it, what Mali will do is it will look at your camera roll on that device, the Apple Photos library on that iPhone or iPad. It will compare the contents of it to your Mali Photos library, and it will delete the instance that is in Apple Photos if it meets the criteria that you set. So if your criteria is delete photos older than 30 days, it's going to look at all the photos in Apple Photos. It's going to make sure that they have been stored to your vaults. And if they're older than 30 days, it will delete them from Apple Photos, but you'll still have those photos available in Mali.
Okay, so if I don't need space on the phone, I don't need to do that.
Correct.
Okay, the other thing is one of the things I learned was you said that you could share photos from messaging
Hmm.
into Mylio. And I looked,
Yes.
Mylio isn't listed. I have to find it down on the more applications. And then I went and looked at, the family shares photos in Apple Photos. And one of the curveballs in Apple Photos is to do anything with a folder that's say been shared by my daughter. I have to import it into Apple Photos, which I don't really want to do. But what I did see is if I click on it,
Hmm.
I can share that straight into Mylio, which is
Right.
a great advantage. But
Yeah.
again, I have to go hunting for Mylio. It's not one of the first options.
So that is a setting that you can change. When you go share something, let me see if I can show this. Um, First, let me figure it out, and then I'll share my screen,
If I could just interject, I
please.
did a coffee break on the free up space options, all of those different things that you can choose when you go into that free up space. I put the link to the article and the coffee break in the chat, so you can grab that and then let me know if you have any follow-up questions.
So there is a way to customize the options that you see in the share menu of an iOS device. I'm gonna have to look it up because it's not immediately
That's
obvious.
now
Oh
that
yeah,
I know
there's a set of favorites. Uh, Here's how you do it. I'll show you. Let me share my screen, Angela.
Yeah.
Come on. Okay. So here's my phone again.
I can't tell you much how much I appreciate your support and how much I like this program.
And we appreciate you being a customer. So I am in the share menu of Apple, right? This looks
Right?
familiar to you. And
Yep.
you're having to scroll all the way and go over here to where it says more, right?
Yes.
So if I click on that, notice that it shows me favorites and suggestions, and there's an
Got
edit
it.
button. So if you click that edit button, you can assign some of the
Perfect.
apps as favorites and turn others off. So maybe you have some that you don't use. So,
Yeah.
and you can
Good.
move the prioritization of them, you know.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, next up we've got Jason.
Hello. Um,
Hi.
I'd like to connect with you guys about um, my organizational process. And what I've done is moved my master folder, my master library out of Dropbox and into Mylio, but I take all my pictures now on my phone. I used to have multiple cameras, but basically it's all. So every year I organize my photos for archival purposes
Mhm.
into, a couple categories of folders: family, friends, events, other things. And those folders tend to repeat year to year. So each year, I would basically do that organizing in Dropbox. So now I have my photos from being kept on my phone, and I can, I can export a whole year's worth, which is what I used to do,
Mhm.
and I can then start to organize those folders. In the last year or two, I found an application before Mylio that allowed me to export folders of images, which I know Mylio does not export folders of images. So I either look at the
It
whole
does.
library, it
No.
will export
You.
folders.
Uh-huh.
So I could organize everything within Apple Photos as I go along through the year, and then build up like just say family photos from 2025. And in those, I thought you could not import
Yeah,
directly
so
from
so
folders.
here's a folder called trips, right? And
Yeah.
within that folder, I have a whole bunch of trips. And within those trips, there's multiple folders as well. If I select that entire folder and I go to the export, the first thing Mike is going to say is like, "You sure you want to export this many files?" So let's assume I do, right?
And you're in Apple Photos right now, right?
No, no, this is in Mylio.
Okay.
I think, Jason, are you asking about
I'm
exporting albums from?
from Apple
Oh
Photos
yeah. Yeah, I'm
into
Okay.
sorry. I
Mylio for
misunderstood.
archiving in
But
Mylio.
you can do that as well. You can
Okay.
export from Apple Photos. You can export an album structure, um, and then have that sitting on the file system, and then import that into Mali, and Mali will preserve that folder structure. I don't have a
Uh,
good photos library to show that with, Angela. I don't know if you do.
but I
No,
think you're
not
saying that
really.
if I have a folder on my Apple Photos on my desktop, let's say,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
and
it's
I've
called in Apple Photos is an album.
sure, right, right.
Yeah.
And so those albums that are in Apple Photos, you're just saying I could export the album itself to my desktop and then import in Mylio? Or is
Yes,
my
correct.
question, is there a way to do it directly once I've linked the Apple Photos library to Mylio library?
So Mylio will not import an album structure from Apple Photos. You would have
Right.
to export it and then manually import it into Mylio. So it would be a two-step process.
So,
And if you do it that way, one of the things that I suggest is that you ask Apple Photos to export unmodified originals and to
uh-huh.
include a sidecar XMP file, which Mali will read, and that'll have all
Yeah.
your metadata.
And just as a footnote, I'm using an application called Photos Takeout, which
Yeah, I've heard of it.
extracts and supposed to keep all the metadata. But let me ask you this. If we set that whole process aside, the one we just talked about, which is a manually exporting,
Hmm.
um, because again, because I use a photo browser named Graphic Converter, or at least I've used it for a long time, it's almost
Hmm.
easier for me to just export my entire Apple's photo library, let's say for the year, a year's worth of photos, just organize them myself on my desktop. It's faster than doing it in the Apple's photo application. So I could do all that manually. But if I have my photos album linked, then I could really just go through on Mylio and pull those photos into the folders I want, correct? So
Yeah.
so now I'm looking at my Apple my camera roll,
Hmm.
and and then I just pull the photos off the camera roll into the photos I want. That's now I'm organizing my archive for the year.
Hmm.
What I often have done after I've exported a year's worth of photos or something like that is I'll go back into my camera roll and delete a bunch of pictures that I keep my camera roll. I've been keeping my camera roll as a small subset of pictures that I just sort of want to have quick access to on my camera and get rid of all the other archived photos, dump them off. So I just want to make sure that if I've linked Mylio Photos to Apple Photos, and I've manually gone through and organized and pulled my photos into the Mylio vault that I
Hmm.
have. Then when I go back to my phone, I can delete photos off the phone. The ones that are imported will stay there, right? And
Right.
then
They're
I
two
just create
separate repositories.
totally separate. So that keeps my camera roll short and direct and just a few things that I just want to have quick, easy access to.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. I keep 90 days worth of content on my phone.
Yeah. Because I'm not going to do the automatic sync and delete.
Yeah. So I
Um,
think what you're going to want to do, Jason, is you're
yeah,
going to want to do a one-time import of your Apple Photos library. Uh, the thing is, you're trying to solve two problems.
right.
First, you want to preserve the work that you've done in Apple Photos. And in order to do that, you'll have to do export and import as
Hmm.
manual steps. That will create a structure in Mylio that has that folder structure replicated. Then you're going to link that Apple Photos library, and because the photos were imported um, already, you're going to end up with duplicates. But all the duplicates are going to be in a folder called Apple Photos. So you can run dedupe in Mylio and say delete anything in this folder. This is why I was telling you, make sure that when you export from Apple Photos, you're exporting unmodified originals, because that's how Mali will see that these are the same files. So you do that as a one-time effort. Let's say you do this through what month are we in? April. So you do this through March of 2026. So now you exported everything through March 2026. You added it to Malio into a folder called Organized by Year, and all that media is there. You link the Apple Photos library. Now you have duplicates of all that content inside the Apple Photos folder. You run dedupe and you say, Malio, I want you to specifically find duplicates in my Apple Photos library against my entire library.
Mm.
and when you go to mark, you're going to say, I want you to delete, remove anything that's in the Apple Photos library because you want to preserve your folder structure that's organized by year.
Hmm.
So when you run that, Mylio will go and if there's copies of the photos that are in the Apple Photos library and in another folder, I don't have a good example of that, but if there were, it would like, actually, here's a good example, right? So here's a copy of a photo that's in my Apple Photos library and it's in a folder called to be organized, blah, 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 blah. In your case, this is my copy of the photo organized by year, and this is the copy of the photo, Apple Photo. You tell Mylio to delete all of the ones that are in the Apple Photos library. And then from that point forward, you just let the photos synchronize into Apple Photos and you move them into the correct folder structure.
Let me ask you before we finish up about a slightly different workflow and see if it makes sense to you. If I link Mylio Photos to Apple Photos, I have a subfolder in Mylio that says Apple Photos, and I can see everything that's in. I would do this work on my desktop or probably my desktop, although I'd like to work on my iPad too.
Yeah, either one's fine.
So now I can see what's in my Apple Photos, and I can just drag from the Mylio Apple System Library folder into a brand new hierarchy of albums
Yeah, I
or
mean
folders in Mylio, right?
that's basically what I do. So I have most of my photos. If you look at the size of my folders, you'll see that most folders are pretty small, except for Mylio Pictures and Trips. The reason Mylio Pictures is large is because within that folder, and I'm going to open it over here. There is a folder called Organized by Year that has a year
Hmm.
and month folder structure. So
Hmm.
if a photo was taken during a trip, I put it in the trips folder because that's when I take most of my underwater photos. There's a reason for this. But my miscellaneous photos are in year and folder. At some point, I go into my Apple Photos library. I add a filter for dates and say I want all the photos from January 2026, right? And now it's only showing me photos from January 2026. I can select them all and I can go to my, folder structure here, Mylio Pictures, organized by year, 2026, and there's a January folder there. I can just grab it, move them there. Mylio says you
Right.
want to move 160 items to January 2026. And I do. I should have done this already. Actually, some of these are
Hmm.
trip, but we won't worry about that. So now there's nothing in my iPhone library from January 2026 anymore. It's now in the 2026 January folder. That makes sense?
Okay. Yes. And then just my last question, because Mylio does look back at the Apple Photos system library, or
Hmm.
if I'm linked, right?
Right.
And so when I delete something off the system library, it's just off the Apple Photo system library, but it's still in the vault, so it's going to stay there.
Correct.
Because I think what I want to do is just open, I think I want to link it, look at all my Apple Photos,
Hmm.
organize them, drag them into different folders in Mylio by what my organizational system is, and then
Yeah.
later go back to my phone. And as I delete them off my phone, they're going to delete out of the system library, but they're already in the vault, so the
Yeah.
Mylio vault, so they'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And
Because it
because
might
they're
be,
coming through your
yeah,
phone, I would use that free up space on this device feature. Let Mylio do the deletion work because Mylio will make sure that the original file has been saved to your vaults.
yeah. Well, I appreciate that. In my case, I've got pictures going back on my phone. I have pictures going back years. My daughter was little, and they're just little quickie photo albums that I've already set up. I'm going to keep those on my phone, but
I
it's this
gotcha.
annual archiving of, the family archive into Mylio, which is like the big stash.
Yeah.
And then on my phone, when I want to do deeper work and do more organizing, I can do that on my phone, iPad, use Mylio for what it's best at. Okay, that's my main question. And I just want to let you guys know that I stumbled across this website last night at night. This webinar last night at 9 o'clock at night. I was so excited to see it up. So thank you very much for putting this together as
Glad
always.
that you're here.
Glad you made it. All right, getting into some of the questions that are in the chat. Jeremy asks, how can I import my daughter's shared library in my iPhone to Mylio? I think we've pretty much covered this
Yeah.
with some of the other questions. Jeremy, let us know if you have any other follow-up questions. Zachary says, how about the image metadata within Apple Photos? Does all of that come over to Mylio as well? Dates, locations, faces, captions, camera model, labels, etc.
Sort of. So the exit data, the data that the camera in this, whether it's a phone or a different camera, the exit data, that's part of the embedded file. So yes, that metadata will come over. Some things like face tags and geotags will also come over. But things like keywords will not, because the way Apple stores that data is it doesn't embed it on the file. It keeps it only in the database, and we have not done the work to teach Mali how to read that part of the database. And the main reason why is because Apple is a really, really big organization and they change their software constantly. We're a very, very, very small organization and we can't keep up. So there's certain things that we know if we offer them, it will involve doing a lot of work on a consistent basis. So we simply cannot. However, if you're doing a one-time export and you export your Apple Photos with an XMP sidecar file, then that metadata will come in. So if you have a big library in Apple Photos that you've done a lot of keywording work and a lot of album work, I would suggest you export that library as unmodified originals with a sidecar XMP file, import that into Mali, similar to what I was telling Jason to do. And that will bring over all of that all of that keywording um, work that you've done and preserve it in Mali. And then moving forward, you just link the photos and then do the keywording in Mylio, because Mylio always writes that metadata to a sidecar XMP file, not just to a database. So if you decide to move away from Mylio, it's a much easier transition. We make it very easy for you to break up with us. But we hope you don't.
Exactly.
That's the reason I signed up with your service. Unlike every other service there is, you guys offer that flexibility. That was a key factor why I signed up with you, FYI.
Well, our business model is to help you organize your photos. It's not to sell hardware or to sell advertising. I'll let you read between the lines there.
All right, I think I covered all the questions. Lori, is there anything in the chat that we missed that we need to go over?
I think everything was covered.
Awesome. Well, if there aren't any other last minute questions, I do want to thank JC for taking the time today to come and share all this information. It's a session that I probably could have done, but he could do it so much better. He understands the intricacies of Apple Photos and Mylio Photos to a depth that I'm still trying to wrap my head around sometimes. So thank you, JC, for sharing your expertise. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it.
My pleasure.
You're always welcome to come and hang out at Coffee Breaks. Love having you here.
They're fun.
Just a reminder for anybody who wants to attend any of our sessions next week, we will have our live Q&As Tuesday, Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have a new session for new users. If you have questions about getting started, getting set up, adding a vault, adding new media, things like that, come join Lori's sessions. Those are also going to be 11:30 a.m. Pacific, and those are Wednesdays. Friday next week, we're going to be talking about using videos and accessing your video files in Mylio. That'll be our coffee break topic next Friday. So hope to see you guys at one or maybe all of those sessions. Thank you guys again for being here today. I hope this was helpful and fun. Thank you again, JC and Lori, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.